All right, and we're back for another edition of Plus Money Picks. This week we have Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, a main event that I'm pretty excited for. Hoping that Sandhagen takes out Dillashaw because everyone's got to hate Dillashaw at this point for being a drug cheat. So last week was my first loss in a while. This took like about a unit loss, so nothing too big, nothing to really hang my head about. I think this card is actually better than last week from a betting perspective. There's more spots to make money. So let's get into it. The first fight we have is Diana Belbita versus Hannah Goldie. Hannah Goldie is a Dana White's contender series alum. She is 5-1. Diana Belbita is 13-6. Both of these women, their UFC runs have not gone too well. Hannah Goldie lost her debut against Miranda Granger, and Diana Belbita is 0-2. She has lost to Molly McCann and Liana Jojua. As far as how these women match up, so it's going to be Belbita that is taller by 3 inches and has a pretty significant reach advantage in this one. When we're looking at the odds, Belbita, the odds have been moving quite a bit. I got Belbita at plus 114, but currently Hannah Goldie is minus 116 and Diana Belbita is minus 104. So when I was looking at the tape, I wasn't too impressed with Hannah Goldie and definitely wasn't going to be taking her as a favorite. She does have a decent clinch because she has a very strong upper body. But she's kind of a decision fighter. She doesn't have, I don't know, there's just not a lot of parts of her game that were all that impressive for me. And then when I was watching Belbita, so she could throw high volume, she's pretty vicious with her striking, I think. All of her finish losses are by submission, and Hannah Goldie's not really much of a submission threat. At least she hasn't shown that she is so far in her career. Belbita, the one thing that I don't really like is she's not great defensively overall, so that could cause her problems. It's just I think she's going to land the more powerful shots, and I think when it comes down to a decision, Belbita's probably going to have just more convincing things on her side. So that was why I decided to take her as an underdog in this one. We'll move on to the next fight. So next we have Sijara Eubanks and Elise Reed, and my thinking on this one was pretty straightforward. Elise Reed, she's 4-0, so already doesn't have a lot of experience. Sijara Eubanks, she doesn't have the greatest record. She's 6-6, but she's faced a lot of really tough competition, and she's kind of just one of those people that a lot of her career has been in the UFC, so she's taken her L's. This fight is going to be at 125, which might scare some people off from betting Sijara Eubanks because she's someone that struggled with making 125. But I think as long as she's, in somewhat of a good shape and the weight cut doesn't wreck her, she should be fine in this fight because Elise Reed, I believe she even fought at atom weight before, so she's going to be a lot smaller. Sijara Eubanks is going to have a significant reach advantage in this one. But she is a bit older, so there's some advantages on each side, I guess, in that respect. But Sijara Eubanks, because of her size, I think she's and because of like her strength advantages in this one, she has become a pretty big favorite. She's already over minus 300. She is currently minus 340, and Elise Reed is coming back at plus 280. On the tape, I just didn't really see anything that was going to sway me away from betting on the Eubanks side. She's not really someone that's worth it to bet straight because of how much the odds have shifted in her favor. But even though Sijara Eubanks isn't the most reliable fighter, I think this week she is someone that you could throw in some parlays. And we haven't really seen Sijara Eubanks getting any submission wins yet, but I think just because of the size discrepancy and the experience discrepancy, this might be the time that we finally see Sijara Eubanks get a submission, which I haven't seen any odds so far on what that prop would be for Sarge to win by sub. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward pick. I'm going to go with Sarge Eubanks in this one. So when we move up in the card, we have Julio Arce and Andre Ewell. And this one is definitely an interesting fight. Arce is going to be coming down to 135. But I heard him talk about it in an interview, and it's not like him fighting at 135 is something all that new to him. It was just that he came into the UFC being a 145er, and then just kind of started realizing that the UFC 145s were just too big for him and were causing him too many issues. But even with that, he had some success at 145. Andre Ewell, he's, I mean, someone that's very big for 135. But I like that Arce is coming down from 145, so I don't think that the size is necessarily going to mess with him too much. As far as how they match up, about the same height, but Andre Ewell, of course, is going to have a decent reach advantage. Currently, Arce 16-4 and Andre Ewell 17-7. And Arce is actually a decent favorite in this one. He's been in the minus 200 range for a while. And currently minus 190, Andre Ewell plus 165. So Arce's one finish loss was by submission. He's a well-rounded guy. He's got submissions and knockouts. He has faced someone with a similar reach as Andre Ewell. Julian Erosa is someone that has a similar reach, and he's also a southpaw. And Arce knocked him out. So I think when I was looking at stats, things that popped out was that Arce has a 67% striking defense. I do like that. Facing someone like Ewell, that's definitely going to only be coming at him with striking pressure. Arce is one of those guys that has a pretty good significant strike differential, 4.25 landed per minute versus 2.87 absorbed per minute. And he's someone that has a lot of good movement, which is something that you're going to need against Andre Ewell. Andre Ewell does have 3 finish losses, 3 submission, 1 knockout. What I like stat-wise from Andre Ewell is he's got a 70% takedown defense. So I do think it'll be somewhat difficult for Arce to get him down. But Andre Ewell, surprisingly enough, actually has a 52% striking defense and lands about as many significant strikes as he's absorbed in the UFC. And I just don't like that 3 of his 4 wins in the UFC are by split decision. And I think if he plays this fight close with Arce, there's a decent chance that he'd even lose that decision. I would say before anyone goes too heavy on betting this one, wait till the weigh-ins, just because Arce hasn't been down at 135 in a while. We don't know how he's going to look at that point. And honestly, Andre Ewell is someone that's pretty big for the weight class too, so maybe he's not going to have the best weight cut, and that could change how you bet the fight. So this is one definitely just to kind of pay attention to. But I am leaning Arce, and I would guess he wins it by decision. But submission would be my other guess for an outcome in this one. So we'll move up in the card once again. We have Adrian Yanez versus Randy Costa, and I think this is a fight that should end inside the distance. Both these guys have knockout power, and honestly, kind of in different ways. Adrian Yanez, he's someone that's pretty quick on the feet, and he's just someone that could capitalize on mistakes really well. If someone comes in too quick and starts ducking, he's someone that's going to wait for the opportunity to hit him with an uppercut. He's just really good with his timing, whereas Randy Costa just wants to straight power shot you and knock you down right off the bat. Adrian Yanez, he is 13-3, and Randy Costa is only 6-1. His one loss was in the UFC to Brendan Davis. Currently with the odds, we have Adrian Yanez at minus 220 and Randy Costa at plus 185. With how dangerous these guys are, I don't know if I'm fully into those odds, but I do think that Adrian Yanez should clearly be the favorite in this one. Height and reach-wise, I don't really think that's going to play too much of a difference, even though Costa's going to have the reach advantage in this one. They're both about the same age, so there's not a lot of physical factors that should be different. I just like Adrian Yanez. I like his approach more than Costa's, when I was watching Costa's loss to Brendan Davis, he really put everything into that first round, which I had heard that he took that fight on short notice, so that could have been part of it. But he looked done after that first round and looked pretty disheartened when he didn't get the finish early. And honestly, Brendan Davis could have just as easily gone for a knockout finish instead of the rear naked choke that he finished him with. Yeah, I just like Yanez's experience. He's got a lot more fights, and he's got fights against better competition too. He's someone that one of his 3 losses was to Miles Johns, and I believe it was a split decision loss. I think that's a good loss to have on your way up. Miles Johns is someone that's been decently successful in the UFC as well. Yanez himself is a guy that hasn't been finished. He's coming off of 3 straight knockouts. Yeah, I just think his boxing's clean enough to catch Costa, but Costa is he is really dangerous, especially in that first round. All 6 of his wins are by round 1 knockout. But yeah, I just don't think he has quite the experience. When I was looking at his wins before coming into the UFC, his opponents had a combined record of 5-14. So I think he's someone that will do well in the UFC down the line, but I think it's early for him to be facing a guy like Adrian Yanez. So I'm going to take Yanez by knockout in this one. And I don't know. I think it would probably be early. I did take the under 1.5, just because that seemed like a decent spot with both these guys having finishing power. But I wouldn't be surprised if Yanez gets him like more late in round 2. So we'll move on to the next fight. We have Ian Heinisch versus Nasruddin Imavov. This one, it's difficult to predict. Imavov, he's decent. He hasn't had too much success in the UFC so far. His one win was over Jordan Williams, which was a hard-fought fight. Jordan Williams actually did okay for himself. And then Ian Heinisch, he's had quite a few UFC fights. He is coming into this fight with a record of 14-4. Imavov is 9-3. And then when we're looking at the odds, they're not too far apart in this one. Ian Heinisch is -150 and Imavov is +130. So getting into the study that I did on this one. So Heinisch only has 1 finished loss, and it was by submission. I'm not really too worried about Imavov getting a submission on him in this one. He's not too dangerous grappling-wise. And Imavov actually as well, his 1 finished loss was by submission. Looking at Heinisch's record, at least recently, he struggled with guys that have striking and grappling. But he's not terrible at grappling himself. He actually has pretty decent wrestling. And he has a good get-up game. And in multiple fights that I watched, he actually had a pretty good Granby roll, which in some positions he was even able to use that to reverse position and end up on people's back. He's someone that could keep using wrestling pressure and get takedowns late in a fight, so I do like seeing that from him. And he's a decent striker. I wouldn't say that he's remarkable or anything, but I think he could do okay against Imavov. Imavov's a guy that he has 7 of 9. 7 of his 9 wins are by finish, and they're pretty split. It's 3 knockouts and 4 subs, but a lot of that's against lower competition, and I just didn't like seeing how much he struggled with Haas's grappling pressure. And Haas is someone that kind of gasses out. I think Heinisch can kind of keep his foot on the gas for longer. But if this does stay on the feet, that's where Imavov's really going to have a solid chance. He's someone that he's a very accurate striker. He'll have the reach advantage in this one. So if it does play out on the feet, I think there is a decent chance that Imavov could probably edge out a decision. But I don't see him finishing Heinisch, and I think Heinisch will probably just kind of use his veteran savvy to win this one. So I see Heinisch pulling off a decision. But I think I'm just going to end up taking Heinisch straight in this one just because the odds are pretty decent. So moving up in the card, once again, we have Let's see. All right, this one's going to be a banger too. This is Punahele Soriano versus Brendan Allen. And I got excited to see Punahele Soriano's next fight when I was tape studying for Dusko Todorovic recently. Punahele Soriano knocked him out, and this guy's just got a lot of power in his hands, and he's still undefeated. So I mean, he's going to end up taking a loss in the UFC at some point, but I don't know if it's really going to be here against Brendan Allen. Uh, so Punahele Soriano 8-0, Brendan Allen 16-4. Both these guys are pretty young, and then their height and reach. The reach is pretty similar, but Brendan Allen will have the 3-inch height advantage. And then this is a fight where the odds are they've just been staying pretty even ever since they came out. Punahele Soriano is minus 115 right now, but I've seen Brendan Allen as minus 115 already. But yeah, Brendan Allen currently minus 105. I ended up betting on Punahele Soriano when they were even at minus 110. And yeah, it really just comes down to the fact that, I mean, Brendan Allen has been knocked out before. He doesn't have very good striking defense. He has a 39% striking defense in the UFC. And he absorbs more strikes than he's landed in the UFC. It's 4.19 to 3.35. Don't really like that. Brendan Allen honestly doesn't even have that good of a takedown defense either. He has a 50% takedown defense. And Soriano was a decently successful wrestler, and he's a judoka. So, yeah, there's not a lot of things I like on the Brendan Allen side. He is coming off of a win over Carl Robertson, but when you watch that, Robertson kind of gave up that submission himself, and Robertson already, I mean, he has a lot of submission losses, so it's not really that impressive to submit him. Allen, I guess, through his career has faced more high-level competition, but Soriano is just looking really good right now. He's someone that has a good striking differential. It's 4.46 landed per minute versus 2.86 strikes absorbed per minute. I mean, he does put a lot into his shots, so I guess you could be slightly worried about this fight getting dragged into later rounds, but we have seen Punahele Soriano go 3 rounds against Jamie Pickett when he was on the Contender Series, so it's not like it's impossible for this guy to go all 3. I think Soriano shouldn't extend any ground exchanges with Brendan Allen because I think that's where Brendan Allen's really going to have a chance. Oscar Piacota put Soriano in some dangerous positions on the ground when Soriano fought him, but then right after that, Soriano knocks him out. So, yeah, there's just way more pointing towards Soriano in this one, and I think he probably gets it done by knockout. I think regardless of how this fight goes, it probably doesn't go the distance, but Brendan Allen might kind of be able to drag it out with grappling exchanges on the ground or something. So yeah, I'm going to take Punahele Soriano by knockout, but I don't think this one is one that you're really going to want to put in too many parlays because there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that could happen with the finishing ability on both sides. So then we're going to move up in the card once again, and next we have Mickey Gall versus Jordan Williams. And I was going to go deep into tape studying on this one, but you look at Mickey Gall's record, I mean, most of his fights are in the UFC. He's only 6-3, and he was kind of just brought in to, I don't know. I mean, he was one of those Dana White looking for a fight guys, and I don't know. The story of his career is just kind of weird. When he got into the UFC, he was fighting people that weren't great. He fought Mike Jackson, then he fought CM Punk, and then he got a choke over Sage Northcutt. But then when he was starting to fight more legitimate UFC fighters, loses to Randy Brown. And then somehow is like I think he's the last win for Diego Sanchez in the UFC, and actually got TKO'd by Diego Sanchez in 2019, which is a terrible look. So yeah, pretty hard to get behind him. And he just got manhandled by Mike Perry. He had some decent striking exchanges in that one, but just I don't think Mickey Gall is going to be in the UFC much longer. And I don't necessarily think too highly of Jordan Williams, but That guy could throw bombs, and I think he's got a decent grappling game too. Mike Perry was able to hold Mickey Gall down, and I don't see why Jordan Williams couldn't do the same thing. I think he'll have the strength advantage. And Jordan Williams, he fights savagely. He'll just be throwing bombs the whole time, and I don't think Mickey Gall can necessarily keep up with that. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna go with Jordan Williams. I think Mickey Gall could probably hold on enough to make this a decision, but there's a decent chance that Jordan Williams just decides I want to knock this guy out, and I think he definitely has the power to do that. So yeah, I wouldn't bat an eye at anyone that's gonna take Jordan Williams by knockout, but if I had to guess, it'd be by decision. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna bet too heavy on this one though. And then we have Macy Barber versus Miranda Maverick. Macy Barber 8-2 and Miranda Maverick 9-2. I like how their records are pretty similar, their experience is pretty similar, and their age is pretty much the same too. Height, reach, pretty similar as well. Miranda Maverick is the favorite in this one, which I do think is deserving. Miranda Maverick is currently minus 137, and Macy Barber is plus 117. I ended up betting Miranda Maverick when she was minus 135. I think Miranda Maverick could get the better of the grappling exchanges. I didn't really like seeing that. Honestly, Alexa Grasso did okay against Barber. Grappling wise, she was able to kind of keep Barber up against the fence more than I expected, which Alexa Grasso is someone that was coming up from 115. So that's why that's not the best look. Barber, she does a lot of like unnecessary movement from the outside. She'll be throwing strikes when she's not even close to her opponent. I don't always like seeing that. And I just don't think Barber, if she does get taken down, which I think there's a decent chance that Miranda Maverick is able to take down Barber at least once, I don't think Macy Barber is going to have much of an answer off of her back. Miranda Maverick is a very strong woman, and I think if she's landing, she's going to be landing harder and probably more often, and she's just very good at timing takedowns. Um, so yeah, both of these women have good cardio and are pretty durable. So I do see this going to decision, but Miranda Maverick does have 6 submission wins. So I think if there's an outcome where this ends inside the distance, I could see it being Miranda Maverick pulling off a submission on Macy Barber, just because I don't think Macy Barber is really all that great on the ground. So yeah, that's where I'm leaning on this one. Taking Miranda Maverick, just going to bet her straight because the odds are pretty good. But if I had to bet on a prop for this one, I'd probably take Miranda Maverick by decision. And then we'll move further up in the card. So after Barber and Maverick, we have Darren Elkins versus Derek Minner. So both these guys have a ton of fights. Darren Elkins is 25-9, and Derek Minner is 26-11. What doesn't look good for Darren Elkins is he has lost 4 of his last 5. And yeah, all of those losses, actually no, he was knocked out, but most of those are just decision losses. And they're to decent competition. Actually, one of them was even to Volkanovski. The KO loss was to Ricardo Lamas, which honestly no shame in that. He did lose a decision to Ryan Hall, which is a funky fighter to face, and then to Nate Landwehr. But that one was very back and forth, and when you look at the significant strikes, they were pretty even. Derek Minner, he's actually on a little bit of a run. He had beat TJ Laramie by guillotine, and Charles Rosa just by kind of out grappling him and holding him down. The TJ Laramie win, it was Laramie's UFC debut, I believe, and I think he was just didn't have the best fight IQ in that one. But then, so when I was doing tape study on this, I started really leaning towards taking Elkins just because of the stylistic matchup. Elkins, he's someone that's like not ever going to give up on the grappling pressure. He's going to constantly be going for takedowns. He's going to constantly be pushing up against the fence. And Derek Minner's kind of someone that he's he's sub or bust. He's like pretty much, if you look at his record, he's essentially sub or get subbed, and he's pretty much always trying to jump guillotines. Which when you're facing a wrestler, obviously it could work because if they're shooting in on you, you could catch it. But I think a lot of these wrestlers in the UFC are expecting people to jump guillotines, and that just makes the takedown that much easier. So I think there's honestly a pretty good chance that Elkins takes him down and smothers him. Derek Minner's not really that big of a guy. He's a little bit shorter than Darren Elkins, and they will have a similar reach. But yeah, I mean, I think Darren Elkins, even being a bit older, he's 37, while Derek Minner's only 31. Elkins has just always had a gas tank, and I believe he might still have the most takedowns in UFC featherweight history. Um, yeah, and his only submission loss was to Charles Oliveira. So I mean, and Oliveira I would say is definitely more dangerous than Derek Minner. If you're looking at Darren Elkins' other finish losses, they were 3 KO losses, but he's not necessarily a chinny guy. And some of those knockouts, I mean, it's people that make sense to get knocked out by. What I don't like as someone that's backing Elkins in this one is he does have pretty horrible scar tissue, and I've actually seen this guy in person, and you could tell like he's been through some battles, and he looks permanently beat up because of it. But that's something that he embraces. That's his nickname's the Damage, and I don't think Derek Minner's able to endure the same thing, and I don't think he's really going to be able to hold up with Darren Elkins in a 3-round fight, essentially. And I just don't think that Derek Minner has quite the striking to outdo Darren Elkins. I think they could actually be pretty even there. I think the odds are heavily in Derek Minner's favor, just mostly because of recency bias. People are just going to look at Darren Elkins' last 5 and assume that he's done. And then the fact, Derek Minner's on this 2-fight run. But I mean, he caught a debuting fighter with a sub, happens. And then Charles Rosa, I mean, his one weakness is getting held out on the ground. So I just don't really put too much stock into that. I think that Darren Elkins is someone that will fight hard for your money, so I'm going to back him in this one, especially since he's out of Sacramento, just like me. So then we're going to move on to the next fight. Kyler Phillips versus Raulian Paiva. So I thought this one was going to be a little bit more difficult for me to choose a side, just because doing recent tape study for other cards, I had watched the Paiva fight versus Zhalgas Zhumagulov. But then I don't know why it just hadn't really clicked to me that this fight's at 135. So this will be Raulian Paiva coming up to 135. And Kyler Phillips, he's dangerous. I mean, taking out Song Yadong in his last fight, that does mean something. Song Yadong's not an easy guy to beat. And Kyler Phillips beat him pretty convincingly. Kyler Phillips got a lot of power at 135. And Raulian Paiva, I mean, he was more of a decision guy at 125 even. And yeah, he doesn't have great striking defense. He gets outlanded as far as significant strikes. The only thing that I would say that he really has stat-wise that's in his favor that could help him in this one is he has pretty good takedown defense. But yeah, I mean, height and reach-wise, it doesn't look like they're that different in size, but I think strength-wise, Kyler Phillips is going to have quite a bit of an advantage. I think there's probably a reason that Raulian Paiva is trying to go down to 125 all the time. And yeah, I just don't think he'll have quite the physicality to beat Kyler Phillips. If you're looking at the odds, pretty hard to just completely bet Kyler Phillips straight in this one. He's all the way up to minus 270, and Raulian Paiva is plus 230. I don't know if I really want to go that heavy with odds on this one. because Raulian Paiva, he's someone that knows how to kind of keep fights close. But I just think that coming up to 135 against someone like Kyler Phillips is going to be pretty tough for Raulian Paiva. And I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets knocked out, to be honest, by Kyler Phillips. Um, so yeah, I think I might have even, yeah, I did end up deciding to bet Kyler Phillips by knockout just because it's plus 450. And I think it's pretty likely. I just don't think Raulian Paiva will be able to maintain at 135 with someone like Kyler Phillips. I think Kyler Phillips is probably going to keep going up in the rankings for a little bit. So then we're going to move on to the next card. We're getting near the top. Oh yeah, we're at the co-main event with Aspen Ladd and Macy Chiasson. So I already had a pretty strong lean before I even started looking at tape. I had recently watched Aspen Ladd, her fight against Yana Kunitskaya, since Kunitskaya was fighting at the in the last pay-per-view against Aldana. And yeah, I mean, Aspen Ladd, she fights like a savage. She hits hard, and she's high volume. Just a lot of things that I like seeing. Yeah, and she's someone that could get takedowns as well. But both these women, they're both high volume, but they both don't have the best striking defense numbers. They actually have a lot of a lot of percentages that are pretty much the same as far as like takedown defense and striking defense. But then when I was watching Macy Chiasson against Marion Renault, I didn't think she looked impressive in that fight. And then other fights that I started watching in preparation for this, I'm just not really impressed with Chiasson. She has a size advantage over a lot of the women that she faces. She'll have a 6-inch reach advantage in this one, which is pretty normal in her fights, and she just doesn't have quite the physicality to use that to her advantage. She's not very physically imposing. She honestly looks pretty slow in a lot of her fights, and even though she has this big reach advantage, she tries to clinch up a lot and just isn't that great at grappling to go along with that. She's someone that could get taken down decently easily, kind of just hunches over when she's clinching. So yeah, I don't see her taking this one. I see Aspen Ladd probably putting it on her quite a bit. And if Macy Chiasson does win this one, it's probably one of those fights where she's edging it out, but, you know, people are kind of booing it because she's just boring. So I'm going to take Aspen Ladd in this one, and I think there's a decent chance that Aspen Ladd could even pull off. She could pull off a finish, but Chiasson's she's pretty durable. So honestly, it's probably going to be a decision, and it's just going to be Aspen Ladd landing the more powerful shots. Aspen Ladd, she has climbed up odds-wise. I think she's been touching, yeah, she's minus 192, so she's been kind of approaching minus 200 range, and Macy Chiasson's plus 167. Yeah, there's just no way I'm taking Macy Chiasson in this one. She could win this fight probably by making it boring, but I just have not been impressed by her at all, so I'm going to take Aspen Ladd in this co-main event. And then that takes us to the main event. And this is, I've been on Sandhagen since this fight was announced. I think 135 is just a weight class that's moving very quickly, and you got to be active to stay in it. And Sandhagen has been very active, and he's been looking good. I mean, his last win against Edgar, he just destroyed him with that flying knee. It was honestly pretty hard to watch to see Edgar go out like that. And then, so TJ Dillashaw is, of course, coming off his suspension, but before that got knocked out pretty bad by Cejudo. Sandhagen, he's been in that minus 170, minus 180 range for a while, and I would bet him just even as a fade of TJ Dillashaw. I think it's going to be hard for him to come off the suspension and keep up, especially now that TJ Dillashaw is 35. Corey Sandhagen hasn't even touched 30 yet, and I think he's someone that's just going to keep improving. He'll have a height advantage and reach advantage in this one. And I think just his ability to mix it up is going to make it pretty tough. I wouldn't be surprised if TJ Dillashaw gets some takedowns in this one, just because Sandhagen's takedown defense isn't all that remarkable. But then Sandhagen's kind of dangerous off of his back as well. So I don't know if that's necessarily smart for TJ Dillashaw to go down there. TJ Dillashaw's got hand speed, but Corey Sandhagen knows how to use his length. I think if he starts mixing in kicks, he's going to do pretty well. And I think this fight probably does go to later rounds, but I see it. I don't think it will go the distance. And I think it's probably Corey Sandhagen that gets a late finish, which is at least what I'd like to see. It's pretty hard to like Dillashaw after the whole scandal with him taking EPO. So yeah, no way that I'm taking TJ Dillashaw on this one. Would I be surprised if Dillashaw won? No, because he was someone that was championship caliber, and I think he's someone that on his return will probably stay ranked for a while. But when he's facing people like Corey Sandhagen, Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan, I just don't think he's going to have it anymore. So yeah, taking Sandhagen. I actually bet him by round 4 knockout, because the odds on that for some reason were plus 1,200 on BetOnline. I thought that was a decently good spot, because I think most likely it's going to be in that round 3, round 4 range that Sandhagen just puts it on TJ Dillashaw too much to where he finally just can't take it anymore. So yeah, that's all my picks for this one. Hoping to have a profitable card again. And yeah, got a big parlay on this one. Trying to see if I could hit a 10-legged parlay that would turn $4 into $326. I did hit a 7-leg parlay in UFC 264 that had a pretty big turnaround like that. So hoping to do it again. And yeah, I hope everyone does well this week. Good luck to everyone out there. I think there's a lot more money lines to take advantage of in this one compared to last week. I think the reason that it was hard for me to profit with my betting style is that I had to do some parlays and everything. And Francisco Figueiredo losing was something that kind of held me down. Losing the Miles Johns fight was not helpful. So hopefully this card stays together, and I think if it does, it'll be a decent opportunity to make some money. If you do want to follow me on Bet MMA, I had created a profile that was +$picks. I've since changed the username to Plus Money Predictions, all written out, all lowercase. So you could follow me on Bet MMA, and I've been putting out picks all week. So yeah, join me on there. And like I said, good luck to everyone out there. Good luck with all your picks. And we'll see you next week for another UFC Fight Night.